Deep in the Egyptian desert, a forgotten tomb is unearthed during a major excavation. The archaeologists, lured by the promise of untold riches and historical treasures, uncover a burial site far older than they anticipated. The tomb is sealed with layers of traps and inscriptions, ancient warnings written in a dead language, long abandoned by history. The lead archaeologist, Dr. Harlan, dismisses the locals' warnings of a curse. He pries open the coffin of the long-dead priest, revealing a perfectly preserved mummy. However, the air inside the tomb is unnaturally cold, and the smell of rot is overpowering. Among the relics, they find a strange, glowing amulet, the Eye of Ra, placed on the mummy's chest. Unwittingly, Dr. Harlan removes the amulet, breaking the ancient spell that bound the priest to eternal slumber. A storm suddenly forms outside, unnaturally violent and fast. In the darkness of the tomb, shadows seem to slither, and the ground trembles slightly, as though the earth itself groans in anger. The mummy is transported to a major city for an international museum exhibition. As the crate carrying the relic arrives, strange occurrences begin. Shipments are delayed. Workers report hearing eerie whispers, and several members of the crew mysteriously fall ill with high fevers and inexplicable symptoms resembling ancient plagues. Despite the unsettling omens, the museum continues preparations for the exhibition, drawing crowds from across the globe. People are intrigued by the ancient mystery, unaware that a dark force has been unleashed. The exhibition hall is packed with curious onlookers. The mummy, dressed in elaborate gold ornaments, lies silently in its glass case. The museum's lights flicker as a chilling wind sweeps through the hall. Visitors feel a cold, creeping dread as they approach the mummy's display. At midnight, as the final guest leaves, the glass case holding the mummy inexplicably cracks. Security footage later shows a shadow moving across the walls, dark and shapeless, growing larger as it slithers out of view. Suddenly, the lights explode, plunging the museum into darkness. The museum's alarms scream, but no one is there to see the horror that follows. The mummy's eyes open. A low, guttural moan echoes through the empty halls as the ancient priest rises, his bones cracking with each movement, his skin crumbling like dry parchment. The next morning, the museum is in shambles. The mummy is gone, its glass case shattered into jagged fragments. Security guards are found dead, their faces contorted in terror, eyes wide open as though they'd seen something unspeakable. Their bodies show no signs of struggle, but are covered in strange, ancient hieroglyphs burned into their skin. The city begins to change in subtle but disturbing ways. A thick, unnatural fog rolls in, blanketing the streets, while the weather turns unseasonably cold. People report hearing unsettling whispers in the wind, and animals flee from the urban areas. A sense of dread grips the city, as if something malevolent is watching. The mummy, now awakened, roams the darkened streets at night. It moves with unnatural speed and strength, leaving a path of destruction in its wake. Buildings collapse, cars are overturned, and anyone who crosses its path is found dead, drained of life and covered in dust, as though they had aged centuries in a moment. The mummy's destruction is not random, it is searching for something. Dr. Harlan, guilt-ridden for having triggered the curse, consults ancient texts and realizes that the mummy is looking for the Eye of Ra, an artifact of immense power that had been stolen from its tomb centuries ago. The Eye of Ra was divided into two parts, each hidden in different parts of the world. The relic was believed to hold the power to control life and death, and without it, the mummy is trapped in the living world, growing stronger and more monstrous with each passing night. Worse still, the longer the eye remains hidden, the more the mummy feeds off the city's energy, draining it of life. It seeks to recover the relic and exact vengeance on those who disturbed its rest. Night after night, the city is plunged into horror. The mummy now appears as a grotesque figure, its body decaying with every step. Its eyes glow with an unholy light, and its breath is foul, like a tomb left open for centuries. Wherever it walks, the air grows thick with the stench of death. People begin disappearing. First a few, then entire blocks are found abandoned as if the residents had simply vanished. Survivors speak of seeing the shadow of the mummy stalking them in the darkness, its hollow eyes staring into their souls before their hearts stopped. Strange plagues erupt across the city. Those who come too close to the mummy develop festering wounds that cannot be healed. Hospitals are overrun, but modern medicine proves useless against this ancient curse. Dr. Harlan teams up with Dr. Nora Grant, an expert in Egyptian curses, and together they follow clues buried deep in ancient texts. They uncover that the Eye of Ra had been stolen by a secret society hundreds of years ago and hidden in the foundations of the modern city. As they dig deeper, they realize the society never intended to use the Eye's power. They feared it. The Eye could open the gateway between the living and the dead, and the mummy was a guardian, cursed to prevent anyone from exploiting its dark magic. The climax takes the characters into the city's underworld, an ancient crypt beneath the urban landscape, long forgotten by modern society. In these subterranean tunnels, they find the remnants of a forgotten temple, once dedicated to the guardians of the Relic. The walls of the crypt are covered in inscriptions telling the story of the curse. The deeper they go, the colder and more suffocating the air becomes. Their flashlights flicker as if something unseen is lurking in the shadows. As they descend, they begin hearing voices, whispers in an ancient tongue. The walls seem to breathe, and at times it feels like the tunnel itself is alive. The air grows thick with a choking, oppressive energy. Deep in the crypt, they finally find the two pieces of the Eye of Ra, locked in an ancient chamber. But just as they retrieve the relic, the mummy arrives. It is no longer the decayed figure they had seen before. It has transformed into a nightmarish creature, a grotesque fusion of bone, flesh, and shadow. The final battle is a fight for survival. Dr. Grant and Dr. Harlan use ancient incantations and modern weaponry to hold the creature at bay, but it is unstoppable. Every strike only seems to make it more furious. Its screams shake the temple, and the earth begins to crack beneath them. In a desperate act, Dr. Grant pieces together the Eye of Ra, its glowing light filling the crypt. But instead of banishing the mummy, the relic gives them a choice: destroy the mummy or use its power to command the dead. With the Eye of Ra in her hands, Dr. Grant realizes that the mummy was never the true evil. It was a guardian, bound by an ancient spell to protect the world from the horrors that lie beyond the veil of death. She chooses to send the mummy back to its eternal rest. The relic shines with a blinding light, and the ground beneath the mummy opens into a swirling abyss. As it is pulled into the underworld, it lets out a final, bone-chilling scream, a sound so full of rage and sorrow that it lingers in the air long after the creature has vanished. The city is left in ruins, and the survivors are haunted by nightmares of the horrors they witnessed. The fog slowly dissipates, but the feeling of dread never fully leaves. The streets, once teeming with life, now seem unnervingly quiet. Dr. Grant and Dr. Harlan, having barely survived the ordeal, vow never to speak of what truly happened. The Eye of Ra is hidden once more, but they know that the boundary between life and death has been weakened. The horrors of the ancient world have stirred, and what was once buried may soon rise again. As they walk away from the temple, they feel the faintest whisper of wind, a familiar voice. The mummy may be gone, but something else stirs beneath the city, waiting for its time to rise. In the cold darkness, the curse remains, dormant but never gone, always waiting for the next unwary soul to disturb the ancient evil buried deep beneath the modern world.